the 7th of August, 2005. There are so many ways I could start my story, but as per usual, I can't quite find the words. Not only that, but I'm scared of what will happen if I do tell it. Even as I sit here in my hotel room with the curtain shut and the door bolted, I can't help but think they're still watching. But this is a story I need to tell, and not just for me. Tucked away in a cold little spot, there is a town called Duskbowl. And when I first moved there in 2004, it seemed to be a quiet little blink of a town with nothing to offer. In short, just what I was looking for. God, I feel like such an idiot looking back. I didn't, or more accurately, wouldn't see the missing posters blowing through the streets, or the way everyone kept their gazes lowered as they silently went about their day. And of course, the only time I began to notice was after the leases were agreed and contracts were signed. But you know what they say? Hindsight is 20/20. It wasn't long before I found work in the form of Duskbowl FM, the town's only commercial radio station. Ever since I was a little girl, I had dreamed of becoming a radio announcer. But my brother was always the confident one. Instead, I'm one of those quiet, unnoticed people. I'm that person who can only think of the right thing to say in the shower 4 weeks after the conversation was had. So I worked behind the scenes, doing audio production for the station's current host, a guy named Marshall. He was nice enough, but really defensive. He was obsessed with being this source of joy for Duskbowl, but was more of a pariah than a saint. For all his efforts, Duskbowl FM had to follow a town-wide media directive that dictated that all media outlets had to report on the flower board daily. And all that did for Marshall was make him out to be a two-faced jackarse, hated by everyone in town. You see, the flower board was a memorial that stood as one of the oldest of Duskbowl's customs. It was a place where every missing poster, every tear-scrawled note, and every bouquet of grieving flowers was set. So when he went on the air and tried to make people happy, he'd also be reminding them of just how bleak their lives were. At the time, I didn't see how badly it was affecting him. I often wish I had. It was around September when Duskbowl reached its final straw. A group of 5 kids aged between 12 and 16 disappeared into the Neverwood and were never heard from again. Duskbowl Search and Rescue barely searched for them, but could you blame them? This is a town where people had been going missing for as long as anyone could remember. It takes a toll. But those children still had parents. And no matter how hopeless it seems, parents are always the last ones to give up. I know that from experience. So they banded together and rounded up one of the largest search parties in Duskbowl's history. And ignoring the constant warnings from Marshall, their peers, and Duskbowl Sheriff's Department, they braved the Neverwood, determined to find their children. Nothing. The Sheriff's Department was quick to round them up as they staggered, defeated, out of the Neverwood. It wasn't long before the Sheriff's Department had set up barricades to stop anyone from entering the looming woods. But why? Duskbowl was heartbroken. After this, Marshall doubled down on trying to help the town. But the mandatory flower board updates left him even further hated. Let me tell you something. If I had a nickel for every death threat he got in the start of September, I'd be a millionaire. I tried to help him. I did. The longer I worked at Duskbowl FM, the more I saw Marshall as a friend. The first friend I'd had in years. We'd watch movies, play games, and just enjoy each other's company. But that side of him became harder and harder to see. As the days went by, he became more and more short-tempered. He was cracking under pressure, and as if things couldn't get worse, then the messages started. Our broadcast started going weird. Strange messages began to hijack our signal, static, whispers, beeps, you name it. Finally, one day in the middle of a show, a woman rang the station and called Marshall out on air. In a lot of ways, I think it broke him. For some reason, he needed to prove that he could help people like her. I still don't know why. So that week, he took his portable recording equipment and in the dead of night climbed the barricades and marched into the Neverwood. He was determined to find those missing kids, or get the town some level of closure. I never saw him again. In his absence, Duskbowl FM would promote me to host. However, I didn't yet have the right skill set, so my broadcasts weren't the best. Even so, the station offered to keep me on, hell, even train me. But I needed to find my friend. I gathered up what belongings of his I could find and started searching. I had a few good places to start. I found his journal. That was sure to tell me something. And another good place to start was down at Garrett Hall, the town's community center. On more than one occasion, I saw police down there arresting members of this group called the Neverwood Exploration Club. I'll try and find them over the next few days. But for right now, I think there's someone outside my room. I'll record again later. Right, so breaking and entering is now a thing we're doing apparently. I don't think anyone saw me coming through the window. I could be wrong though, I can't be too careful, especially not after that thing. It looked... Okay, stop. Just breathe. Ashley, you're fine. I'm okay. I was back at the hotel. I just clicked off the tape recorder because I thought I heard someone outside my room. It was barely audible. So sorry. No, I can't describe it very well. The closest thing I can think of is wet feet on concrete, but even that isn't quite right. Whatever it was, it made me feel wrong. I didn't want to hear it. It made my hair stand on end, and that was just from the sound of the damn thing. It can't get in. I bolted the door. It can't get in. I kept muttering to myself. My eyes were glued to the bolt on the side of the door. I kept expecting it to slide open by itself, like in an old monster movie. Just on the edge of my sight was a dark corner that the light from my little lamp couldn't quite reach. My heart was screaming in my ears. I couldn't take my eyes off the bolt, but something in me needed that corner to be visible. I could still hear feet shifting just outside my door. Was it a person? Why were they just standing there? Okay, so if they're outside, I should have enough time to run over, switch the overhead lights on, and run back, I thought to myself. Okay. I was trying to psych myself up. Despite everything in me screaming not to move, I made a mad dash for the light, switched it, and turned on a heel back to my spot on the floor. But as I did, I quickly looked to the now lit corner. I fell in place. What I had seen made my head feel like it was buzzing. There was this almost sound, sort of like a deep, inaudible hum. And the longer I stared at the thing, the worse it got. It wasn't outside the door. It was in there with me. Oh God, it was inside. How did it get inside? It was like I was having a seizure. My whole body had tensed. My fingers had stiffed and locked. I could hardly move, but I had to get away. I must have looked pathetic as I crawled. I turned back to see it again. It felt wrong, like I was seeing something I wasn't allowed to. It hadn't moved. It was just standing there. I couldn't tell if it was a man or a woman, but it definitely looked like a person, or the naked shape of one anyway. Why didn't I just let it stay in the corner? I just had to turn on the light, didn't I? Now I will have that thing in my mind forever. I can't unsee it. The person's skin looked like it was covered in thousands of slimy lumps, all moving around in unison. No, not moving. Looking. They were looking around. This person's entire body was covered in eyes. What little skin there was acting like a weeping eyelid. I yanked my head away. I couldn't bear to look at it anymore. It physically hurt too. I was sure it was going to get me as I groaned and whimpered my way to the window on the far side of the room. Was it still in the corner? Was it standing over me? I couldn't worry about that. As I crawled out of the second-story window, I thought to look back, but only caught a glimpse of it as I fell outside. But even that blurry mental image hurt to look at in my... what do they call it? My mind's eye? Whatever, that sounds good enough. Basic motor control was slowly coming back to me as I staggered through the streets. If I was going to run away, I'd hoped I looked more like Hermione Granger as I did it. Instead, I think I looked more like Gollum as my back was hunched and my fingers were curled. I had been scared of being seen for weeks, so flailing through the streets was a big no. Lucky for me, Duskbowl's nightlife is non-existent. I guess that'll happen when everyone in this damn town has the life expectancy of a AA battery. Anyway, eventually I found my way to Everson's motel. I was going to come here initially, but I felt that the other hotel didn't smell as much of piss and beer as this one did. Oh well, play with the hand you're dealt. I snuck around the back and broke into one of the rooms closer to the ground this time. The fallout of the other hotel was sure to leave some marks, and frankly, I've had my fair share of windows for one night. And that brings us up to speed. I've been sitting here for the last few hours, trying not to make too much noise, and making fists as I slowly get feeling back in my hands. I don't want to know what that thing was back there. Is it too much to ask that it may have just been someone having a February Halloween prank? I guess not. Jesus, what have I gotten myself into? Anyway, there's nothing in Marshall's journal about freaky eye people, so I'm stuck on that front. But, as expected, there is a lot of stuff in here on the flower board. He keeps writing about someone called Jamie. Tomorrow I'm going to the flower board to find out what I can on her. But as for right now, I need to sleep. Good night, tape recorder. Do me a favor. Keep an eye out for any scary eye monsters. Alright? I never liked the flower board. And you know what? I've never tried hiding it. It's probably why I always had a hard time making friends here. It's funny. Dad would say that that's just me making excuses for myself again. Come to think of it, maybe that's why I hate the thing. It makes me think about what happened with Dad and... Anyway, point is that I never liked the flower board. It was hard at first to find anything related to a girl called Jamie. All I had was one name. One name on a memorial that had at least 50 added to it daily for years. So I sat there for hours rummaging through letter after letter and poster after poster. You would not believe how many paper cuts I got. At one point, an older woman, easily in her mid-60s, stopped me.
What are you doing?
She asked with a clear, disapproving sneer in her tone. I paused. How do you respond to that? Oh, I'm just looking for a clue that'll hopefully lead to answers regarding the potentially supernatural disappearance of one of my coworkers. Yeah, sure, bright idea. So instead, I said, I'm trying to find something about my sister, Jamie. I didn't like lying, but it was better than the alternative. The old woman just said softly,
Love, if you think you're gonna find something about your sister on that wall, she's long gone.
The edge to her tone fell away and was replaced with what I can only describe as loss.
Listen to me, girl. Forget about your sister and leave Duskbowl before it swallows you up. That's what this town does.
The old woman walked away. You know, if I'm going to be approached by an elderly woman whilst on the run, I'd hope that she'd at least be some magic, wise woman talking about destiny and crap. Instead, she just left me feeling sorry for her. I went back to searching. It was another hour before I found what I was looking for. It was a clipping from the Weekly Ivory. It read, Jamie McIntyre, beloved daughter of Clarice McIntyre, forever in our hearts. So I had a clue. Clearly Jamie was dead and gone, but her mother, Clarice, well, jury's still out on her. So I reasoned that my next step should be to find her. It wasn't hard. All it took was a quick check in the Duskbowl phone book. I tried ringing her house a few times from a payphone, but nothing. Had the line been disconnected? In the end, I decided to visit her myself. When I got there, her house was surrounded by those big, semi-permanent metal fences you often see around work sites. Was she having renovations? Well, the sign saying, Restricted area, authorized persons only, prohibited by Duskbowl's Sheriff's Department. Alright, so there goes the reno job theory, I muttered to myself. I really didn't want to have to break into yet another place in the span of 48 hours, but it really didn't seem like I had much of a choice. I checked over my shoulder to see if there were no passerbys or oncoming traffic, and climbed the fence, cleared it without a hitch. Even better was that one of the house's doors had been left unlocked. Teenagers? Laziness on the part of Duskbowl's finest? Oh well, I needed in, and I found a way that didn't require me to break any more windows, so I saw it as an overall win. The house wasn't anything special. It had clearly been left alone for a while. The walls had a thin coat of dust and grime, and the house was pitch black, because, of course, it had about as much natural light as a friggin' vampire's den. The kitchen was as you'd expect, same for the lounge room. The only thing out of the ordinary was that nothing had been looted, which was doubly weird, considering how long it had been abandoned for. That was until I made it to what I can only assume was Jamie's room. The room was empty. It looked like it had been gutted. Oh, you've got to be kidding me! Nothing? I complained, to no one. I wasn't going to take that. I couldn't. I'd spent most of the goddamn day trying to find this place, and now I get here and there's nothing? I had to give it at least a once-over. Man, I could have really made a fine detective, I whispered to myself. I was about to give up, when hidden away in a small mouse hole, I found a small, scrunched-up ball of paper. I plucked it up and unwrapped it. It was a drawing, made with a black pen of some kind. The picture was of a featureless man, covered in crudely drawn eyes. I had to admit a shiver went up my spine. This made the creature I saw real. Somebody else had seen it. Jamie had seen it, but where was she? What happened to her? Jamie, I said again, staring at the drawing. Flipping it over, the drawing was on the back of a printout of a very old newspaper clipping. It was the start of a story about Duskbowl's favorite boogeyman, the Lady of the Lake. But it was very low quality. There was a word circled, though. It was hard to make out, but I think it said, Companist. There was only one more addition made with Jamie's black pen. Scrawled along the bottom were just 2 words. The Composer.
G'day guys, it's me, Harry, and I just wanted to say thank you for listening to this episode. Duskbowl is, well, it's my passion project, and it just means so much to me that you support it. And if you'd like to support Duskbowl more, feel free to like, subscribe, and support us on Patreon. Anything at all that you could give would mean the absolute world. Your support really does mean everything to me. And I just want to apologise if you can hear trains and cars in the background. I've recently moved, so the whole setup is different. For a lot of you, this is going to be the first time you've actually heard Duskbowl, because obviously you didn't have the biggest following in the start. There are the tapes that if people new coming in want to listen to, feel free. They will give you a lot of context, I feel. I want to thank Romnex so much. I feel like a lot of you will be coming from her channel. Without her, I don't think Duskbowl would be getting the traction that it's getting at the moment. It really does mean a lot that she helped me out, and she is amazing. Please, if you aren't a subscriber of hers, please go to subscribe to her. She's absolutely fantastic. She does amazing horror narrations, and it is a crime she doesn't have a larger following than she does. If you want more Duskbowl, we're going to be uploading fortnightly, and on top of that, on our Instagram page, we actually have like a BARG found footage type story that's going on that you can go and enjoy, which I'm sure you'll get quite a lot out of. So that's on our Instagram page, which will be linked in the description. I'd also like to start having Duskbowl artwork competitions. So if you guys have any fan art that you have of Duskbowl, send it through to the Duskbowl email address, and then the winner of that competition for that week or fortnight will then have their artwork platformed both on our YouTube channel and on our Instagram page. Ash was voiced by the amazing Caroline Fester, and the always absolutely fantastic music that Duskbowl just wouldn't have an identity without is by Samuel Burke, a longtime friend of mine, and please go follow some of his music. I'll be linking some of his bands down in the description. And lastly, if you want to have an Australian accent in any of your projects, I'm a voice actor myself, so if you want to have me on board, feel free to hit me up on my FIVERR, which I'll also be linking in the description.